In this video, I'm going to show you how to use an image or video as a mask for a blur in Blender. This will allow you to blur part of a video without blurring the whole thing. I have set up a project in the Blender Video Sequence Editor according to the instructions in my Blender video editing tutorial, which I'll link in the description if you're interested. In effect, I just have one video file here, and I'm viewing it in the preview window right here. So this video content is just some pattern that moves along the screen and also changes size a little bit. Now, in order to apply a selective blur to this, I'm going to be using the compositor in Blender. And in the properties window on the right side of the screen here, there is a tab called Strip Modifiers. And with this video strip selected, I'm going to click Add Modifier, Compositor, and then New. And so this is going to create a group of nodes in the compositor under this sequencer name for me to make modifications to this video strip. So I don't currently have the compositor open. You can open the compositor by clicking on this little icon on any of these windows you have open and choosing compositor. Or if you want to keep all of these open, you could right click on the border between two of these and click on, say, vertical split, and then choose a region for this, and then open compositor. So now I have both the preview window and the compositor open. Okay, but we don't currently see any nodes, which are the inputs and outputs for our transformations to this video content. And that's because we are currently looking at scene rather than sequencer. So these nodes are in sequencer. So let's click on sequencer here. And now you'll see there is a very basic setup for the compositor right now. Essentially, we have the input, which is our video content, that is being passed to output and to what we see in the viewer. Now we want to introduce the blur between our input and our output. And the way I'm going to do that is by actually deleting the connections that currently exist. So we still have the video strip in our sequencer, but our input is not connected to our output. So you'll see actually that our preview window has changed to just black at this stage. Now what I want to add for a blur is a filter, blur, and defocus. And the reason I use defocus for this sort of selective blur is that it allows me to specify the Z value for the blur. So in effect, I can have an image or a video where I have an X and a Y defined by the axes of that image, and then a strength for this blur effect given by the lightness at the pixel within that image or video. So you can also use internal tools in Blender to create masks, but I like to use Inkscape or other image editors to create mine. That's just what I'm used to using. So in this instance, I'm going to drag image into image here. So the image that we have as the content for our video strip is going to be passed as the input to this defocus filter. And then the output of this defocus I'm going to pass to the output and the viewer. And so now we get back actually essentially the same thing we had before. We have just the video content. There is a defocus being applied, but there's currently nothing driving this defocus. So there is no blur happening in effect. So the way I introduce a blur selectively is with image or video that is in black and white. So I'm going to actually open Inkscape, which is an image editor I like to use. And I'm going to create a white rectangle that is 1920 by 1080 pixels. And I'm going to resize the page to this content. So when I'm working with a black and white image that I want to use to selectively blur something in Blender, white is going to represent a region that is not blurred, and black is going to represent a region that is blurred to the maximum extent. And anything between that, so grays, would be blurred to a lesser extent, an intermediate extent. So I'm just going to show what this looks like with the black and white blur where the left side of the screen is going to be blurred. So I'm going to export this image, and I will call this something like mask.png. And I want to use that to drive this Z input to defocus. So I'm going to add an input that is just an image, and I'm going to open that image and then pass image to Z. And I have to click this use Z buffer checkbox here, and that will apply my selective blur here. So you can see that the left half of my image is blurred and the right half is not. Now, what I often use this for is for text content, like a title or open captions on a video, because I find it helps with the visual stimulation in effect behind the text, where if you have a lot of things going on in your video, if it's a very busy video, the content behind text can make that text hard to read. And so I like to softly defocus it a little bit and make it easier on the eyes, easier to read the text. So I'll show an example of what this looks like. I'm going back to Inkscape here, and I'm just going to create a sample title. So maybe I'll call this sample. And I'm going to align this with the center of this page. So I want to just export the text in this instance, so I'm actually going to delete the background of this and make the page maybe a little darker just so you can see the text here. So this is now a transparent image that has white text on top of it. And so when I export this, it's just going to be the text. I'll call this maybe overlay. And I can now add this to my video content. Let's go look at overlay.png. And I'm going to put this on top of the video content. So my window here has actually gotten a little bit slower. It's kind of lagging a little bit. This blur operation takes a lot of computational effort. And in fact, it's continuously applying this blur to generate preview frames in Blender. That's this little purple bar that is continuously moving to the right here. So I'm actually just going to unlink this from the viewer right now, just so I can have a little bit more responsive window for editing. All right, so I now have an overlay here. And if I didn't have a blur effect, so let me unlink this as well and just route the input straight to the output. It looks fine as is, but it may be a little difficult to read if this background were any more lively, if there were anything more going on in the background. So I like to defocus this a little bit by introducing a mask that surrounds the text. So I'm going to head back to my Inkscape window here. And now I'm going to work on a mask for this. So I'm going to reintroduce my white background rather than a transparent background. And now I want my mask for the blur, the part that's going to be blurred, to be this text and then a little bit more. So let me choose a more reasonable value for this. So in this instance, I now have some additional thickness to my text here. I've added a stroke to it. And so I'm going to use this as my mask to show how this works. So if I go back to my compositor nodes here and open my mask2.png, if I route the output of defocus to the output here, you will see that the background is blurred only where this mask has been applied. So I have sample, and then right behind that I have a blur, but that blur doesn't affect any of the other content. So maybe if I increase the maximum blur here, That'll also increase the computational effort, but it'll maybe make it a little more obvious what's happening here. All right. So now only the content right behind sample is blurred. You can also make this a little softer. So what I like to do is make this stroke bigger and then introduce a blur as well, so that the strength of the blur effect sort of falls off, so that it's not a harsh transition between them. So let me export mask 2 again, and then I will load this once again. And so now I have content blurred behind this text, but it's not a sharp transition between unblurred and blurred content. There is more of a smooth transition. There's a gradient between the black and white regions of the mask image. So I find this is really helpful for titles and captions especially. If you have any questions about this, please don't hesitate to reach out and let me know. I'd be happy to help.